Today, I am delighted to welcome our special guest presenter, Cheryl Myers. Cheryl is an integrative health author and natural medicine practitioner. An expert on natural health, she is a nationally recognized speaker, and she is frequently interviewed by prestigious publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Prevention Magazine, for her thoughts on natural medicines. Cheryl is a well-known advocate of bridging the worlds of mainstream and natural medicine to achieve optimal health outcomes. She currently serves as the Chief of Scientific Affairs and Education for Europharma Incorporated. Today, Cheryl is joining us to discuss a topic of great interest to many people, and that is hemp and marijuana. So thank you very much for joining us today, Cheryl, and welcome to Terry Talks Nutrition.
Thank you so much, and thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your busy day to learn more about what I think is one of the most amazing natural medicines on the planet, and those are the compounds that we find in the plant family of cannabis. But, of course, one of the biggest questions that we're asked is, what's the difference between hemp and marijuana? You know, and if you're puzzled by that question, you're certainly not alone. In fact, there's many state legislatures that seem to be wrestling with this very idea. What are the definitions of each, and how do we distinguish one from the other, and what are the usable parts and what are the not usable parts, and how do we use it medicinally, and is it effective? Those are some questions that I see in the health news every single day. So it helps to start with the nomenclature of how the plant is named. So the plant family is called Cannabis sativa. So when I'm talking to patients or when I'm talking to retailers or other people who work in this industry, I say, think of the rose family. When you talk about roses, are roses all the same? Well, you've got red roses and orange roses and yellow roses and pink roses and white roses, and you have roses that grow on a bush and roses that grow long stem and roses with many petals and roses with a few petals. So it may be that they are all roses, but they do have variance and variation between the different types of rose bushes. Well, the same is true of the Cannabis sativa family. Cannabis can be used to refer to either hemp and or marijuana. However, marijuana has been cultivated over time to have higher and higher levels of a plant cannabinoid, which is an active plant compound called tetrahydrocannabinoid. That's THC. That's what makes you high. That's why people that are using marijuana recreationally are seeking it out. It's because it gives them this feeling of relaxation, at the same time a little mood boost. Sometimes they get a little giddy and things are funnier, and I sometimes jokingly say, and they really appreciate the brownies a lot better than before they use the THC. So it has a lot of psychological effects on individuals who use marijuana recreationally. Now, so therefore, because it's a valuable cash crop, even though it's illegal in many states, it is cultivated to get as much THC into the plant as possible. And the place where the THC is concentrated is in the leaves. So when you're growing marijuana, it's a short, bushy plant and that short, bushy plant has a lot of leaves on it, a lot of clusters of leaves. When you talk about industrial hemp, it too is Cannabis sativa, but traditionally hemp has not been used for THC. It's been used because in the stalk of the plant there are some amazing plant fibers, and these fibers can be woven into cloth. They can be compressed into building material and plastic-like substances. I don't know if any of you saw the article on Jay Leno, who collects cars, has a car where the shell of the car is made from industrial hemp. So it can do some amazing things. It can make rope. We've all heard of hemp used in rope. There are also compounds in the industrial hemp plant that are medicinally important, but it has extremely low levels of THC, especially in the stalk. And so when we look at the difference between those two, marijuana is a short, leafy plant. Industrial hemp is taller with more fibers and fewer leaves. And the predominant cannabinoid in industrial hemp is called CBD, cannabidiol. It has very little of the compound that gets you higher that can be used recreationally. So here's some photos. So if you look on the left, you'll see that industrial hemp is grown for the stalk and the fibers, but also the seeds. The seeds of hemp are edible. They're high in plant protein. They're also high in plant omega-3 fatty acids. So that doesn't have the kind you find in fish, but it does have the kind you find in plants. So that's what you get when you use hemp stalk, hemp seed, hemp fibers. When you look in the lower right-hand corner, you see the difference in these plants where these have a lot of compressed leaves. This is a Cannabis sativa that is being cultivated as marijuana. It has a lot of flowers and leaves and a very high concentration of THC. Cannabis has been part of human history for literally thousands of years. It has been used medicinally, ceremonial, agriculturally. It's an incredibly valuable plant. Cannabis is found in tombs dating back over 2,500 years, 2,500 years ago. In fact, in the United States, it was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia for over 100 years, well, almost 100 years, 1850 to 1942. It was listed as an approved medication. Cannabis was used for sleep, for pain, for people who had migraine headaches. It was highly effective for menstrual cramps as well. So in the United States, up until around World War II, cannabis was sold as a medicine, and the fibrous stalks were used for a variety of applications as well. Sorry. So looking at, we differentiate between, excuse me for just a moment, folks. I think I skipped ahead. Okay, it flipped over a little bit. So when we look at how we use cannabis medicinally, it contains compounds called cannabinoids. And these are molecules that are plant-based, or they can be made by the human body, or they can be created synthetically. And the definition of a cannabinoid is a compound that interacts with a cannabinoid receptor. A phytocannabinoid is, phyto means plants. So these are cannabinoids from plants that interact with our endocannabinoid system. And the richest source of plant cannabinoids, not the only source, you can find cannabinoids in carrots and cloves, in certain kinds of echinacea, but the richest source is, in fact, industrial hemp. There's more than 120 different plant cannabinoids in industrial hemp. Now, endocannabinoids are those cannabinoids that are made in your own body. You know, our body has cannabinoid receptors that regulate a wide variety of physiological activities in the body. It's like, I often think of it as a telephone operator, that the signals come in, but then the telephone operator makes the decision of who to connect to whom. You know, you may call the operator, for those of you that remember a time when people used operated assistance phone calls, but you call the operator and the operator would connect you with the person to whom you wish to speaking. But if the telephone operator decided you didn't need to speak to that person, maybe she didn't connect you, or maybe she thought you should better connect with Susie Smith down the road instead of Bobby Brown, she might connect you to someone else. That's how I envision our endocannabinoid system, as they are regulators of some of the signaling that's sent throughout the body, and therefore they play a profound role in everything from thinking, relaxation, the way that the brain functions, to the way the gut functions, to the way that the joints function. Now, synthetic cannabinoids are being used in some supplements and in pharmaceutical development and research. These are chemical compounds that are created to mirror the image of the cannabinoids that are found in plants. So when we look at the cannabinoids, plant-based cannabinoids are THC. You all have heard of tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the compound that gets you high that we see lots and lots of. 20 to 30% of marijuana is THC. We also see cannabidiol that has a rich legacy of literature for a variety of human illnesses, including seizure disorders. But remember, these are two of over 120. The human-based, or inside your body cannabinoids, the endocannabinoid system, our body makes two main cannabinoids, and they're called 2-AG and anandamide. And anandamide is named after the Sanskrit word for bliss. So you can kind of get an idea of what anandamide does in your body. If you don't have enough anandamide in your body, you're not going to have very much bliss. Anandamide plays a role in positive emotional control, in reducing feelings of dysphoria and anxiety. It also allows us to react positively to the stimulus in our environment, and it plays a role in pain control. So if you don't react very well to the stimulus in your environment, and if you have a lot of negative emotions, and if you have higher than normal levels of pain, you can imagine you're not going to have very much bliss in your life as well. So just for a second, let's review phytocannabinoids. In the leaf or the flower of marijuana, the main cannabinoid is THC. It has the others, but in smaller amounts. But in the stalk of industrial hemp, we see high levels of CBD, teeny tiny amounts of THC, and over 100 other phytocannabinoids in there as well, including cannabichromene, cannabidivarin, cannabidiolic acid, cannabigerol, all of which have independent physiological function. They all have their unique activity. Now, the seeds of the plant are quite valuable. They are a source of oil. They're a source of the omega-3 fatty acids, so healthy fats, but no cannabinoids at all. And some people are getting confused by that. They see hemp seeds for sale or hemp seed oil, and they think that they're getting some of the benefits of the medicinal phytocannabinoids when in fact it contains none. Those are from the stalk. And so when you're looking to supplement, you have to use an extract from the stalk, hopefully combined with the omega-3 fatty acids and the compounds found in the hemp seed oil in order to create a medicinal product. So full-spectrum hemp oil extracts are quite superior to just taking one single compound out of the plant and trying to use it. There's more to hemp oil than CBD, and I can't stress this enough, and I sometimes jokingly say, imagine if you're tasked with building a barn, and you're sent out into the field with shovels and hose and concrete and latches and roof tiles and beams and wood planking, hammers and nails and saws. You've got everything laying around in the field, and they say, hey, there you go, build a barn. How effective are you going to be? But imagine, even if you're a super magnificent, fantastical architect and a carpenter, it's going to be a long and painstaking process. But just imagine if that carpenter, that master architect and builder, had 100 to 120 friends that could help him or her along in this project. Think how much more smoothly it would go. Think how much more would get done. And that's the way I think of full spectrum hemp oil. Because yes, indeed, CBD is the most prevalent cannabinoid in the compound, and it does have some amazing health benefits, but all of the rest of the family and friends do as well. So we call this the entourage effect, meaning that the singular compound that's medicinally active sometimes performs much better in the presence of its entourage of the other companion molecules. So when we look at some of the individual functionality, let's just look at cannabidiol for a moment. We all know that it plays a role in pain relief, reduces incidence of seizures, but did you know that it's also antibacterial? It helps people to control their blood sugars. It helps to fight nausea. So whether it's induced by nausea or chemotherapy, it does help to fight nausea. It's been shown to slow the growth of tumors, helps individuals with stress and anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. But let's look at cannabichromene for a minute. It has some overlap with CBD, but CBC also has antifungal activity. It also fights cancer, but via different mechanisms. Let's look at cannabinol, CBN. Now, not only does it promote restful sleep, which in truth CBD does as well, but it also helps with bone density, and it is also a better compound to stop seizures once they've begun. CBG, cannabigerol, again, it has some overlap with the other members of the family and some individual functionality. So it only makes sense to use them all in conjunction if you're trying to get the most beneficial medicinal effects. Now, the legal issues are kind of fuzzy, and so it can be quite confusing when you're awash in a sea of, what do I buy? Am I looking for medical marijuana? Am I looking for CBD? Am I looking for purified crystallized CBD? Am I looking for, what am I looking for? Am I looking for hemp? What am I looking for? I think that's the question on everybody's lips. You want to get connected to the real deal. And there has been such a ridiculous amount of adulteration going on because CBD has exploded in popularity. And there was a recent, I think it was about 4 months ago, a recent incident where people were selling CBD oil on the internet, and when they tested it, it was canola oil with green food coloring in it. So whenever there's a lot of money to be made, it seems to lure all the little rodents out of the woodwork because they want to make sure that they get their piece of the pie. So we're dealing with people that are sometimes not the most ethical in their labeling or in their production values in creating hemp-based products, at the same time as the problems with inconsistent legality. So when we look at hemp and hemp products have already been determined at the federal level to be legal because it is part of the USDA Farm Bill that hemp is a crop that is allowed to be grown. You can use it for hemp protein, you can use it for hemp seed, you can use it for hemp oil, you can use it for hemp stalk and fiber. But each state can also layer on some of their own requirements. Sometimes even at the county level, they're trying to layer in their own level of requirements because they don't understand. They don't understand the difference between hemp and marijuana. And so you get some crazy places like, for example, Ohio is really struggling with this right now because in Ohio, the Pharmacy Association in Ohio was trying to say that if you're selling hemp in any sort, whether it's got THC in it or not, it still should fall under the marijuana legally, and only pharmacists and pharmacies should be able to dispense it. Then you've got other places where, for example, Indiana, where it's perfectly legal to not only sell hemp oil, but to label out the individual compounds as long as you have a barcode on the label that takes them back to the exact certificate of analysis that shows what they contain. So you can imagine how crazy it is that if you travel across state lines, you might be dealing with a whole new set of regulations. But on a federal level, let me reiterate, hemp and hemp products are entirely legal to sell. But you should be careful about companies that use deceptive language, like cures cancer, developed for seizures, cures everything, because, number one, it's illegal to make those kinds of claims about dietary supplements as part of your marketing campaign. And two, that sort of gives you an idea of the level of sophistication of the people with whom you're dealing, that they don't even know supplement labeling law. It makes you wonder what their manufacturing and their other standards might be as well. So to recap, hemp and marijuana both come from cannabis, but they are not used in the same way. Hemp contains much higher levels of CBD and almost no THC. In fact, the legal standard is 0.3 milligrams, whereas marijuana 0.3%. Marijuana contains 20 to 30%. Hemp contains less than 1%, 0.3%. That's what the federal regulation is. If you are at 1%, you're no longer regulated as hemp, you're regulated as marijuana. So they are very different compounds, even though in the same plant. Cannabinoids from hemp are used for a lot of different health concerns. There are studies on cancer, epilepsy, chronic pain, psychological and mood issues. There's even some good studies on schizophrenia. And to supplement the body's own endocannabinoid system, hemp oil, full spectrum hemp oil, can absolutely be used to achieve some pretty magnificent benefits. So when you are looking to choose a hemp oil or hemp extract, number one, please make sure that it's full spectrum, that it's non-GMO, it's non-genetically modified, it's tested for pesticides and herbicides. CO2 extraction is considered the best way to extract hemp oil because there's no chemicals used. Grown and regulated outside of the United States to comply with current regulations. In the United States, it's currently on the books, although not always enforced, that it is illegal to transport hemp products across state lines. Not necessarily your hemp clothing or hemp belts, but the crude materials, the raw materials of hemp. I think those regulations were originally initiated because they didn't want people shipping marijuana stocks across state lines as part of the drug trade and trying to disguise it as industrial hemp. Therefore, some of the best hemp oils are found from Europe, where they are cultivated and turned into an oil via European standards and then shipped as a finished good to the United States. They must have on their label that they are less than 0.3% THC, and they should not focus on the CBD alone, because the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has determined that products who focus on CBD alone are drug products and not dietary supplements.